pretty, I don't know, entertaining clip here of Joe Biden completely forgetting which country he is supposed to be talking about 3 times. And don't mind the source here, RNC Research. Look at this. Exposing lies, hypocrisy, and failed far-left policies of Joe Biden, the Democratic Party. Yes, it's a very far-left policy to continue the disastrous U.S.-led war intervention in Syria, which is absolutely and horrifically and continues to horrifically devastate that country. Yes, Joe Biden continuing on that tradition that started under Obama. Trump escalated it. And Biden's continuing to support that. Yes, that's very far left. Not canceling student loan debt, even though Biden could do that with the swipe of a pen. That's very far left. Not doing that at all. Not being in support of universal health care. Not wanting to defund the military, dismantle the U.S. empire. Not supporting those things is very far left. Not supporting abolishing ICE. Actually wanting to give the police more money as they continue to execute black and brown people almost on a daily basis in the U.S. Yes, that's very far left. So what I'm trying to say is RNC is trash, Democratic Party is trash, both bought and completely beholden to corporations, to the capitalist class, both in support of white supremacy. The Democratic Party just puts a more polished version on those things. So let's take a listen at Joe Biden confusing Libya with Syria 3 times, and then we'll discuss a little bit about what exactly is going on in Syria right now and how it's just fucking sickening. The horrors were continuing. Horrors the U.S. government, mining your taxpayer dollars, is continuing to level on this country. It's so fucked up. It's so fucked up.
We can work together with Russia, for example, in Libya. We should be opening up.
He meant to say Syria there. Syria. But again, Libya is another place the U.S. and their NATO allies should have never invaded. Libya should have never overthrown Muammar Gaddafi. Libya, at the time, pre-invasion, actually had a very high standard of living in the country by all of these various metrics, and has been completely and utterly decimated by that U.S.-led war, and actually had fucking slavery come back to the country as a result of this U.S.-led fucking war. Another just fucking just totally disgusting and unnecessary war that, of course, the U.S. was leading the charge for, as they always do. Again, the U.S. empire is and has been the biggest threat to world peace for quite a long time. And if that's news to you, what fucking rock have you been living under? Seriously, get the Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, talk radio, corporate talk radio bullshit off of your TV, out of your earbuds, and actually consume some real fucking analysis, people. Come on.
Passes to be able to go through and provide food assistance and economic assistance.
Oh, man. I mean, is he this dumb? Is he this obtuse? Or is he feigning ignorance here? Does he not realize the fucking crippling sanctions that are on Syria right now, making it unbelievably hard for people to get food, for people to get electricity, for people to get medical care, medical equipment, because of the fucking sanctions the U.S. has leveled upon that country, or how the U.S. fucking controls a third of Syria, the oil-rich region, as well as the breadbasket of fucking Syria, where they produce a lot of their wheat. So you not realize that? Does he not know that, or is he deliberately being this fucking stupid? I mean, Jesus Christ.
Vital assistance to a population that's...
The fucking vital assistance they need is the U.S. to get the fuck out of the country, lift the sanctions, give the country and the people there economic fucking reparations like so many other countries all across the fucking world.
Trouble. I think I'm going to try very much hard to... it is, by the way, there's places where... I shouldn't be starting off and negotiating in public here, but let me say it this way. Russia has engaged in activities which are, we believe, are contrary to international norms, but...
You know why Russia got involved in this situation to begin with? Is because the United States, as a bargaining chip to get the Assad regime out of power in Syria, they were willing to let fucking ISIS and these fucking jihadist groups who were beheading people, parading people around in cages, doing all kinds of fucking crazy, fucked up, fanatical shit, because that's what those fucking jihadists, these Al-Qaeda linked, these ISIS groups do. The United States was willing to let them get to Damascus, take over the capital of the country as a bargaining chip to get Assad out of power. Russia knew that, and that is why they stepped in. Because, they thought, rationally, logically, no, that's probably not a good fucking thing if ISIS and these Al-Qaeda linked groups take over the whole of the country.
They have also bitten off some real problems they're going to have trouble chewing on. And for example,
the country that has the real problems fucking chewing on shit is the fucking United States. Again, the U.S. empire is the biggest threat to world peace and has been that way for multiple fucking decades. Jesus Christ, is it any big surprise why the U.S. government is viewed as such a destructive and malicious and just disgusting evil presence all over the world? We have fucking 700 military bases in 100 plus countries. We do shit like have these crippling sanctions on countries like Syria, like Venezuela, like Iran, that disproportionately target and harm the most vulnerable and marginalized people in those countries because simply we don't like the governments that are in power in those countries because they're not willing to do the bidding of the U.S. empire, of the multinational corporations that control the U.S. empire. And as a result, those people in those countries suffer a great toll. And if you're not willing to acknowledge that and call that out, then you're not on the left and you can fuck off, frankly.
Rebuilding of Syria,
Before this fucking U.S. war, this U.S. intervention in Syria, what was 2011, right? Under Obama, Syria, prior to this war of aggression, this intervention led by the U.S., again, Syria had a very high standard of living. They had fucking universal health care, for fuck's sake. We don't even have that in the United States right now. Richest country in the world. Syria had this prior to this. They had a very good standard of living. And yes, I'm not saying there weren't problems. There weren't issues. There are some authoritarian things in the Syrian government, in the Syrian society. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm not saying I know what all of those are. But it's not a fucking reason for the U.S. to intervene and completely decimate and destroy that country. Jesus Christ.
They're there.
It's your fucking fault, Biden. You're a piece of shit.
They're there without the ability to bring about some order in the region, and you can't do that very well without providing for the basic economic needs of people. So
again, the reason those people are struggling and suffering so much, not having enough food, their currency being completely devalued, not having access to medical care, not having access to electricity, medicine, etc., is a direct result of the fucking U.S. intervention and the crippling Caesar sanctions that have been placed on that country. They're not able to rebuild because of that. I mean, again, is he this fucking dumb? Is he this ignorant? Or am I giving him not enough credit? Is he playing? Is he acting? Is this, I mean, somebody behind the scenes like giving him acting, or is he just this fucking stupid? Seriously, please, I would love to know. What do you think?
That we can find an accommodation that where we can save the lives of people in, for example, in Libya.
So they're confusing it again. Libya with Syria. It's the second time.
That
or third. Well, that was. We'll just watch it one way through. I won't comment. You probably heard enough of me commenting on this fucking asshole.
We could work together with Russia. For example, in Libya, we should be opening up the passes to be able to go through and provide food assistance and vital assistance to a population that's in real trouble. I think I'm going to try very hard to. It is. By the way, there's places where I shouldn't be starting off and negotiating in public here, but let me say it this way: Russia has engaged in activities which we believe are contrary to international norms, but they have also bitten off some real problems they're going to have trouble chewing on. And for example, the rebuilding of Syria, of Libya, they're there. And as long as they're there without the ability to bring about some order in the region, and you can't do that very well without providing for the basic economic needs of people. So I'm hopeful that we can find an accommodation that where we can save the lives of people in, for example, in Libya.
There's three. Shut up. We heard you enough of that, Biden. Shut the fuck up. Okay. And then, so a little bit of context on these sanctions. This was from, when was this made? Let's see. April 2021, so recently. Foreign policy. Friend of mine was found dead in his bed this past winter because he had no heating. Why? Because U.S. sanctions are hurting ordinary people rather than Bashar al-Assad's government. There's only an hour or so of electricity per day. Biden's talking about, well, we gotta take care of the people there. We gotta make sure their needs are met. We gotta make sure they're okay. And the fucking sanctions, you draconian, warmongering, racist, fucking capitalist asshole. Last month, my phone rang. A relative in Damascus asked me to help a young Syrian child, Mohammed Dafis. Two-year-old Mohammed's family uses a Primus kerosene stove, a Victorian era product for cooking. There's no boiler for running hot water in the shower. Electricity rationing in Syria has reached its highest levels due to the government's inability to secure the fuel needed to generate electricity as a result of international sanctions at the behest of the U.S. Like any child of his age, Muhammad is playing with the siblings in a 300 square foot dark house. Muhammad fell into a tub of hot water heated by his mother on the Primus stove. She moved away for a chore momentarily, but in the dark house, Muhammad did not see the tub. Hearing a scream, his mother ran to him. His father, a street vendor, confined to a wheelchair due to a wounded leg from the war, rushed to him as fast as he could. They hurried the scalded boy to Al-Mujahid Hospital in Damascus, a government-run facility. Again, before this U.S.-led war and intervention that has absolutely devastated Syria and the Syrian people, they had universal fucking healthcare. The burned and bleeding child's condition worsened. He then needed a blood transfusion. The government doctors stood helpless in the face of his pain and suffering. The transfused blood was infected. Muhammad's family now urgently needed to transfer him to a private hospital. But how does a father who sells tomatoes in a trolley foot the bill? And then the currency be devalued. It's about 3,660 pounds to the US dollar. An average wage in Syria is less than $2 a day. Muhammad's father did not even make a dollar. The Syria Civilian Protection Act of 2019 was signed by then U.S. President Trump. Haven't heard Biden come out against that, right? Didn't talk about any of the fucking U.S. role and just absolutely fucking up this country royally. Was sold as a win for the forces of justice against a brutal government. You know, fucking a brutal government is the fucking U.S. empire. Jesus Christ. But the act has not brought justice. Instead, has brought starvation, darkness, plague, misery, robbing, kidnappings, and the destruction of a nation. International aid no longer reaches Syria to the extent it did previously because many agencies fear falling foul of the Caesar Act. And again, it's more of the same with regards to U.S. imperialism under Biden as it was under Trump. And that is horrible for people in the global south. Biden confuses Syria Libya through times. He also appears to boast that Russia's inability to provide for the basic economic need of the people in Syria is a point of U.S. leverage, assuming means U.S. sanctions that, like Biden, U.S. media won't mention. Yes, precisely. Biden official Dana Stroll in 2019 via military occupation. U.S. owns Syria's resource-rich economic powerhouse region, and via sanctions it can, preventing reconstruction aid and technical expertise from going back, leaving Syria in rubble, which is exactly what they're doing. Again, how is this any different than what was being said or done under Trump? It's fucking not.
The United States still had compelling forms of leverage on the table to shape an outcome that was more conducive and protective of U.S. interests. And we identified 4. So the first one was the 1/3 of Syrian territory that was owned via the U.S. military with its local partner.
Owned by the U.S. military. Just happens to have all the fucking oil there.
Syrian Democratic Forces. Now this was a light.
This is the disgusting fucking warmongering imperialist assholes that fill out Biden's cabinet, just as they did under Trump's, just as they did under Obama's, just as they did under Bush's, Clinton's, and so on.
U.S. military, only about 1,000 troops over the course of the Syria Study Group's report, and then the tens of thousands of forces, both Kurdish and Arab, under the Syrian Democratic Forces. And that 1/3 of Syria is the resource-rich, it's the economic powerhouse of Syria. So where the hydrocarbons are, which obviously is very much
oil.
a public debate here in Washington these days, as well as the agricultural powerhouse. But we argue that it
so literally starving the people in Syria of oil, saw the problems with people only having electricity for an hour fucking day, and food, kind of important. This fucking ghoul is bragging about that. I mean, that is just like, what kind of warped worldview do you have to just be so devoid of compassion and empathy for people in a part of the world who have done nothing to you at all to warrant this fucking disgusting level of just psychotic just outlook? I don't even know how to describe it. It's just mind-boggling that somebody, but again, it's mind-boggling. I'm at a loss for it. It's just so fucked up, right?
1/3 of Syrian territory that the U.S. military and our military presence owned, both to fight ISIS and also as leverage for effect.
You don't fucking own that, you piece of shit. That belongs to the people of Syria. The Syrian government should be in control of that region. That's their fucking country. And again, I think that's very funny that she's talking about fighting ISIS when, these so-called moderate rebel groups, the U.S. empire was completely okay with giving weapons and all types of aid to, and these same groups would then go and give these weapons to these Al-Qaeda, these Al-Nusra, these ISIS linked groups. And now we gotta have this presence there to fight back these forces, you know, that we actually ended up arming and funding.
The overall political process for the broader Syrian conflict. There were three other areas of leverage. One is political and diplomatic isolation of the Assad regime, so holding the line on diplomatic isolation, preventing embassies from going back into Damascus. Two is the economic sanctions architecture. So some of this is part of the maximum pressure campaign of the Trump administration on Iran, but there's a whole suite of both executive and congressional...
Jesus Christ. Again, this just shows how far right-wing U.S. politics is when this person is in the Biden administration and the Democratic Party is somehow left. I mean, Jesus Christ. This is...
sanctions on Syria and Bashar al-Assad, both for human rights abuses in Syria.
How, like, ironic, but in a deeply sick and sadistic way. Like, it's almost like they're mirroring or parroting what they actually view and see themselves or the U.S. empire as being. So, you know, we gotta sanction the shit out of this country. We gotta sanction the shit out of the Bashar al-Assad government for all these human rights abuses, when the fucking U.S. empire does that exponentially every fucking day, all over the global south, in the U.S. and abroad. That's, again, kind of super hypocritical, but again, I think it's a little bit of projecting. Like, deep down, they probably know, like, this is fucked up, this is sick, but we can't own that. We gotta, keep, propping up the U.S. empire and all of our horrible war crimes and abuses in the U.S. and around the world, and project all that nastiness onto somebody else, like Syria and Bashar al-Assad.
To the backers of Assad for their activities in support of him in Syria. And three was reconstruction aid. So the United States remains the overall largest single donor of humanitarian aid to Syrians both inside Syria.
That's so... A lot of that came from the fucking CIA trying to overthrow Bashar al-Assad. Again, how fucking twisted is that? Like, here, like, let's destroy your country, let's bomb the shit out of it, let's starve you, let's take your food, let's take your oil, let's make sure you only have, access to an hour of electricity a day, let's make sure you can't get medical care, let's destroy all your infrastructure, but here's some money, here's some aid after we do that. See, we're not all bad, we're actually helping you, see, U.S. is good,
And refugees outside of Syria, and there was some stabilization assistance in the part of Syria that was liberated from ISIS and controlled via the Syrian Democratic Forces in northern
Okay, I just fucking can't. That lady's just a fucking psycho. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Again, so Biden completely and utterly missing the mark, not wanting to talk about how the U.S. has just completely and utterly fucked up and destroyed Syrian infrastructure, how the U.S. controls a third of the fucking country, the resource-rich part, but yeah, it's all Russia. They really fucked it up. It's all the Bashar al-Assad government. They fucked it up. Nope, not me, not the U.S. empire, not the head of the U.S. empire. We're always doing good around the world. Jesus Christ, like that. Yeah, this just again really illustrates how far right politics, the two political parties, which again, there's only one political party in the U.S. It's the Party for Imperialism. Again, the highest stage of capitalism, as Lenin pointed out, and white supremacy. And again, that's the Dem-Repub party. There's no substantive difference. Biden just puts, a little bit shinier veneer on imperialism and white supremacy. But again, nothing of substance, especially foreign policy-wise, has changed under the Biden administration. And again, that should be deeply, deeply disturbing to anybody concerned about the lives and well-being of people, particularly in the global south, that are affected, for example, in Syria, by these disgusting and crippling sanctions, or whether it's, Iran, Venezuela, etc. The list goes on. Wish I could say that was surprising. Frankly, it's not. I wasn't expecting much of anything from the Biden administration. Still really disgusting and disturbing on a number of levels. Just the crimes against humanity the U.S. empire has been responsible for over the decades, centuries even, you could probably argue, and the ones that continue to perpetrate. Really, yeah, definitely not proud to be an American, and I am completely fine saying that. Peace, much love. If you like the video, like the damn video, subscribe for more content. All power to the people.